Hi everyone, welcome to Got Therapy, the Dan Rose Show. That is Dr. Dan Rose. I'm Michael Baltimore and I get to ask the questions, and we kind of talk about a little bit of everything on this show, a lot of mental health and counseling and personality and issues in living, you might say. So we've talked about quite a few things on this show. Gardening as well may come up. But
potting soil. I know a lot about potting soil.
Yes, there's nothing, yes, and it's fine to have a wide birth knowledge there you want to add to it.
You would eat lots of potting soil. You know what pica is?
Pica is the idea that it's still in the DSM-4. I don't know if it's going to be in the DSM-5, but pica is
narcissism. You know, they took it.
Eating clay.
They took out narcissism in the DSM-5.
Oh, you're free.
That means I'm cured.
I was thinking you're free.
That's what it means.
You're absolutely free now,
cured.
and there's nothing. Why would they take out? Why would they pica? Well, let's finish that one. Pica is eating the dirt, eating minerals.
Yeah, and inorganic matter.
Inorganic matter, and so in the South, there's a lot of white clay eating. And they talk about, but I don't see anybody going to the psychiatrist or being put into potting soil as well. All right, we finished that topic. Let's go back to this other. You just mentioned what?
That supposedly they've taken narcissistic personality disorder, the DSM-5.
Well, look, I've heard a lot of people use that term in just regular conversations. Oh, he's a narcissist because he's talking about himself. He's talking about himself. Well, they did mention you a couple of times, but in the just normal scheme of things, it seems to me that there is narcissistic personality disorder. There is this narcissism where all the focus is on selves at the expense of others, and why would they get
I think what they're doing is
rid of that?
The whole Axis 2 personality disorder thing was too murky, so they're mixing it up, and so they found a way to take what the symptoms that we've placed within the box of narcissistic personality disorder. They're now distributing them in a certain way, and so you can code those sorts of symptoms, but not as someone who is, quote, narcissistic personality disorder.
Okay, so they're pulling out the personality disorder.
That's what I heard.
Axis 2 kind of thing, but narcissism is not going away. I mean,
I'm still here.
All right, well, is there a good narcissism? I mean, is it something, good and bad? It mostly gets a bad rap, if you will.
Well, there was a guy by the name of Heinz Kohut.
Okay.
And he wanted to be able to show that there actually is a positive form of narcissism. In fact, he would say that some form of self-love, and not the kind that you'll go blind from, but some form of self-love is a... I like that.
No,
but some sort of self-love is good.
Yes.
That that you an investment in self. And
right. Well, you know, and this is interesting because I heard something the other day, and I'm just listening to radio and some podcasts and that kind of thing. And the person was talking about therapy, going into therapy, and if you're depressed, for example, if you come in with clinical depression or so forth, that a lot of the work by the therapist is to help you focus on self. It's really give yourself back that time and attention. And
I've been doing this wrong.
I'm kind of wondering about taking care of yourself. You hear that a lot. You hear a lot of people talk about you must take care of yourself. That's kind of the use of narcissism in a treatment approach, if you will.
But with this guy Kohut, he would say that most narcissists aren't taking care of themselves. They don't really have a good investment in self. For instance, somebody who has a really good investment in self has a capacity for what he would call self-object relations, which means they can make use of the people in their life to be able to give them the sort of emotional sustenance they need, as well as to be able to give that back as well. And a narcissist, even though, the typical narcissist would be somebody called a phallic narcissist, someone who is sort of the center of attention, and in their presence you often feel less than. It's important for them to be able to maintain a position of power, authority, and control. That's also OCPD, but so you have that sort of stuff. So, but the individual who needs to maintain that position doesn't really invest in self. They're really not, they are in a place of consistent and constant projection. They see the world in a way that is, that has temporary emotional utility. So their capacity to invest in self and other is minimal, according to folks like
Okay, and it's less of this give and take in the relationship. So it's more receiving, but not maybe giving back. And I think that's the general understanding.
Say that around me.
the general understanding in the
I didn't go there, but I'm sorry.
No, I know. Yeah, we're not talking about you right now, so it's hard for you to pay attention on this. But yeah, that's kind of the general notion in the community that a narcissist is going to talk about themselves a lot. They're going to want to be the center of attention. They need their need for power and those kind of things. But that seems to be.
Wear a lot of purple.
And they're true, and that's a nice purple shirt you got there.
Like that, yeah.
But
I've been working out. Can you tell?
But okay, so is this a continuum? Is it a range that I've got a little narcissism, I got a medium amount of narcissism?
You know, my man Kernberg, he talks about how that there is a continuum of all things, but there is a neurotic level narcissist, and lots of people remember Bill Clinton, right?
Yes.
This is a guy I've never met the guy, but let's assume that based on some of what we know about him, politicians in general typically have to have some level of neurotic level narcissism,
right.
Which means they seek the center of attention, they seek power, but they're also able to maintain some, at least minimal object relations. They can deal with another person as a separate individual, as a whole object. They can relate to them as a human being. So they can, in attachment theory language, they have the capacity to mentalize. So they can deal with someone as a complete subjectivity, at least often enough.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, politicians, we all know, and a lot of people think, well, they're self-serving and their own self-interest and those kinds of things, and really get into these jobs when they're not thinking about the people, but their own political party and those kind of things. So I guess we're really familiar with those kind of things. So the narcissism, this personality disorder, is going away, but is that maybe still part of a diagnosis and how we might go about understanding what the
this whole DSM-5 scares me, because there's been a lot of. In fact, there are several organizations in Europe who've said they're not going to utilize it. I think
is that right? Okay.
European Psychotherapy Union or something like that. There are already some real dislike about this thing.
Okay.
So it may fall apart.
Yeah, there's a little that I've heard is that we've had nice categories, but we've also in the DSM-4, so you can fall into depression and anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder or one of those, and they got a nice category system there, and that part of that is going away with the DSM-5 in that it's more you're on a continuum. Now, we all have understood in mental health that generally in the category it's probably not cut and dried that you're in this category. You may have symptoms from various kinds of things. You may have some anxiety and depression kind of coming together. And even with the personality disorders in the list of symptoms, you may have a number of symptoms from other personality disorders in those categories. But at least we had categories. We at least had some definition. And now it seems to be kind of on a floating point, that it's somewhere on this continuum and we're not sure. And I don't know how that's going to serve us. Particularly the clinicians are out there trying to understand how to treat and what the best way to treat someone really is. So
it's certainly going to make it harder for me to disparage based on,
right, labels of some sort.
It's hard to be make fun of and label like,
I'm a little curious about this DSM too. So narcissism going away. You know any of the others that are going away? Because I'm thinking we haven't talked about autism. I think we probably talked about that a little bit.
Asperger's is supposed to be going away.
Yeah, okay, so, yes.
You know, that my friends used to say I put the ass in Asperger's.
Okay, that's a nice joke. All right, so got to keep this show moving somehow. But the idea of this, again, the continuum, that, all right, so what's the point? Is there going to be a number or a signed number, or we just say globally, here's what we think?
I think the idea, I remember when my wife was an intern in Oklahoma, and one of her first they all met, and they had a class or a seminar on DSM diagnosis, and the person asked, "Do you believe that psychological disorders are categorical, or if they are on a continuum?"
Right.
But what would be a word for? There's categorical and continuistic, or I don't know, whatever that word would be.
Right. Well, I think we get the point. Yeah.
Those two things. And most people in the room said, "We think they're a continuum." And she said, "No, you're wrong. They're a category. Because if you're in a disease model, you got strep throat. You don't have strep throat-ish stuff.
Right.
You got strep throat.
Right.
You got like
the medical model. There's a disease model kind of thing. You have something or you don't have something.
Shin splints. Is it splints? Shin splints.
Yes.
You don't. It's like you got a thing. And so the disease model suggests we can diagnose, and then based on the diagnosis, if you have strep throat, which, by the way, I was telling my kid, a cure for strep throat is not bananas. No matter how many bananas you eat,
that's right.
your strep throat's not going to go away.
I need to see the doctor there.
But it's cheaper. That's all I got to say. A thing of bananas is a whole lot cheaper than a doctor.
I think we almost went to something there just a second ago. There was a flash of in another room there in the future. I don't know how that fits in, but that's okay. That's probably one of those situations. But yes, so
you're supposed to have, so you have this, and so
and
I think that if we evidence-based treatments, you're supposed to, you have a diagnosis, and based on this diagnosis, you do this. I think the DSM is going to problematize that, because if it's in a continuum, then you're going to have to, you might have to actually think a little more complexly. You may have to be your Aristotelian linear logic is going to be challenged. You're going to think along more than one axis, maybe a horizontal and vertical axis, sort of a polyaxial sort of thinking.
Well, I think for clinicians, though, that's probably a good move in that direction to think a little more in a complex way about a treatment approach and what the symptoms really mean and how to approach those kind of things. But I know from clients want answers. They want to know if they have this or have that, and they kind of, Adler talked a lot about his dislike of labeling people. One of the early psychotherapists and writers in this area, and it was very much against labeling people because it became iatrogenic. It became, sort of self-absorbed. The person took on that label and began to live and act out in that way. Thought it was a bad way to go, and now we seem to be kind of moving away from those categories and labels that come with those categories to this continuum. I'm interested to see how that's going to play out in the mental health field.
Well, I know that there's a real push. I think there's even going to be something, mindfulness and things like that are going to be really saturating this new DSM thing, and I think.
But sometimes those are vague terms as well. It's not very specific in that, and then you have to learn this new vocabulary, and there are going to be differences with those kinds of things. But mindfulness sounds like a very positive term. You mentioned it before, even in our last show, I believe. We're talking about this idea of really kind of paying attention to what's going on in the inner self and reacting and
prefer when people are paying attention to me, but that's back to
that's the narcissism thing, which by the way, if it goes away, you're free and clear.
I know. If it goes away, like I said, I'm cured. I'm like, that means my wife can no longer complain.
Absolutely.
It's like,
Well, I remember when we moved from the DSM, I've been around a while, so the DSM-3 to the DSM-4, right? And there was this big...
You're old school.
I am old school in that. I actually remember before then. But still, the point was that there was a lot of talk about relationships.
Back in the... You remember when they were trepanning, right? When they would drill holes in the head.
Right, not that far, no.
You weren't back that far,
No. Not quite. We didn't do that. But
trepanning.
But in any case, there were, at that move from 3 to 4 in the DSM, there was this notion that everyone was hoping for more relationship diagnoses, more systems, more family systems, and it was a big letdown for all the folks who were into the family therapy, family systems models, would look at relationships, and that was a big letdown. As a matter of fact, there was some backlash against that, and several people wrote some very nice books with those notions of the diagnosis for relationship problems and began to break that down. But never got any traction.
My wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. Her roommate was getting her PhD in a family systems program.
Right.
Her roommate didn't like me. That doesn't relate to what you're saying, but it's sort of the way it does.
I totally understand that. Absolutely.
From that moment on, I didn't like systems.
Yeah.
Like I just think, that they don't like me.
They don't. Well, you're in a system, whether you like it or not. And so this DSM-5 is coming out. They keep promising this thing. I don't think it's going to make it. They just put the carrots a little further out every time. So
I want them to make it scratch and sniff, like a pop-up book. Like if you get to the phobia section, you open it up. There's like a spider. That's what I'm hoping for.
Well, I think I like the idea. I remember going to a workshop with one of the psychiatrists who actually was the author in the personality disorders, and he had videos of each of these disorders. He had actual client videos, authentic videos of people who were in these various categories.
And video for frauderism.
Yes, that's right. Well, the idea was that you could see it and kind of understand that, oh, this was a particular diagnosis. And now I'm not really sure what the general population of counselors, mental health professionals are going to be able to rely on with this. They're going to have to go back to school, do you think?
Well, I'm still paying off my loans, so I'm hoping that's not the case.
That's not the case.
I will believe that, like, we sent several of our folk over at the counseling center for some workshops on this,
right.
And they came back all really stressed out.
Yes.
Saying it's changing everything, it's messing up my world.
Well, there you go.
It doesn't really mess up our world so much because diagnoses aren't necessarily, but like in my private practice.
Right. Yeah, well, third-party payers, insurance providers.
They want some sort of diagnosis, you know.
Absolutely, you got to get paid.
I got to get paid. I mean, these purple shirts don't
grow on trees.
Yeah, they don't. Well, I think it's cotton.
Well, yeah, so it grows on bush, but
somebody's got to like weave that.
Doesn't grow in your backyard. So you have to get paid. So the insurance. How are so this is a big the movement here to change the diagnostic system and the categorization of mental health disorders, and now move to this continual model. And how are the third-party providers going to actually allow you to treat people based on that?
Third-party providers are always trying to find a way not to pay you. So
that
really,
is absolutely true. This is going to work in their favor.
So I think they're looking at this and saying maybe we'll find a way to be able to to not pay.
I think that's going to work. That may be the case.
But I suspect at the heart of this, though, maybe this is more conceptual.
And change is always difficult for everyone. So this may be a better system, and we just it may be dealing with our own anxieties about this change that's coming on.
You think it's existential, that at the core of this is just about people want consistency to stave off.
And that's true throughout. I mean, in development, you look at child development, kids want the same thing over and over, and so they feel a sense of comfort and safety and so forth. And I think that's true with adults.
Yeah, my kid's always wanting a hug, and I think that, I thought we'd moved past this. He's 6. I thought we had,
I say keep up with the hugs, okay? So,
I think he's outgrown this.
No.
But the kid's always like,
But that sense of stability and that sense of safety with what we know, and we're creatures of habit.
I would say too, though, there is inherently something about the field of psychology. It has it has hard science envy, and there is something about the way that we are wanting to pattern ourselves after biology, for instance, or to adapt to take on a medical model.
Sort of the soft science to the hard sciences, compare those kind of things. Yes.
And we. This move may reflect we need to do some soul searching on even this whole push for evidence-based treatments. They're often there's something highly problematic about that as well. As if someone comes in, you could diagnose them, and then you have sort of a step-by-step process.
Right. And when you get down to it, the categorization of mental illness. I mean, no one ever really fit into all of the symptoms in each of those categories very well, and that's why they had 5 out of 7 and 4 out of 6. On the narcissism scale, this is 100%. There's no argument about that. But what they did in the DSM-4 TR, and that's what we're trying to figure out. With Louisa had a test yesterday on it. She actually made a 97.5. She did very well on that introductory test there. She was a little confused by the TR.
That has impacted my narcissism, because you saying that, I suddenly feel less than. And so there's a narcissistic disequilibrium that has occurred as a result of that statement.
And it's true.
So I can either denigrate her or myself. And who do you think I'm going to choose?
I think you need to think about yourself in that category, because I know Louisa, and that wouldn't go over too well. And so, but and also she's the one that sets the curve in the scoring, and there she's the one that always makes the 100. And the rest of us are making the 80s.
I think she cheated.
Yeah, okay.
That's really, I think.
All right, now you're denigrating her, so you're feeling better because.
So suddenly I feel better as soon as I was able to. You see, because and again.
I love this narcissism playing itself out right here on TV.
At that moment, it generated some emotional contagion. I found myself in a non-equilibric state.
Right.
And so I was doing this, and I had to be able to correct that.
Right.
And so I could move to a place. God, I should have studied harder. I'm no good. But I didn't choose that.
You didn't.
Instead, I said she cheated.
She cheated and threw it on her.
Like this.
And then
so
you
now
come
suddenly
back.
I feel better.
You're
and
better.
now I could run with that and I say she's a horrible human being.
You could go
I
further.
can't believe she did that.
I know.
And
I
as
know.
a result, I start feeling better and better and better.
And everyone else around you gets smaller and smaller,
That's right.
and you get taller and more powerful.
And I like that.
Evidently. I think it's the effects of the purple shirt, but other than that, I don't know.
So give me another disequilibrium and see what I do with it.
Right, give you another one?
Yeah, so a narcissistic injury. Hit me with one.
Okay, listen, that beard is so 80s.
80s.
Yeah,
Okay,
here we go.
Let's see.
This is 2013.
Okay, yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, my first thought was to stab you in the eye, but I can't do that because I would feel better. See,
Yes,
but that's not, yeah.
I know, that was the closest one. But,
so I can't stab you in the eye, but I'm going to hurt someone you love. How about that? No, I'm still,
okay,
still,
no, that's still
not
not
good. That's still not
helpful.
good.
Not helpful.
I know, you're a poopy head.
Okay, there you go.
Suddenly,
And,
I feel better.
See, and I know you have a 6-year-old, so that works at home.
Yeah, it does.
Absolutely.
I call him a poopy head all the time. That kid is.
But so we get these injuries, and if I mean, what about just the regular guy without narcissism? Let's pretend for a moment you
Everybody
don't
gets
have
those
it.
in. Everybody gets those injuries.
Okay, so that's everybody's going to get that narcissistic
Everybody.
wound of some
For instance,
sort. Right.
when they found out the people in the class when she made the 97.5,
Yes.
all of them, there was a narcissistic hit.
I
it's just
think
the way
so.
things were. And she may have felt the hit because it wasn't 100.
I congratulated her, but I felt that hit at the same time.
Right, you could, yeah?
Yes, I did.
Like,
yes.
you know, like if you told me about this was a couple weeks ago about that kid who invented like his own apps and all that
Yes,
sort of
that's right.
Okay,
yeah,
that
we
very
talked
moment,
about that on the earlier
There
show.
is a
Yes,
narcissistic
absolutely.
impact. You
Yes.
feel that.
What's wrong with this guy?
Right, see?
I don't like him.
So the
That's right,
difference
he did
between
his
you
own
and
app,
someone
sorry.
who's a narcissistic personality disorder, you have the capacity to maybe be mindful
Well,
of the impact and then do something else with it. Or you may have, because of your developmental history, you may have accrued and developed the sort of defensive, healthy defensive patterns. You could deal with that in a way that didn't involve having to denigrate individuals.
Well, you just demonstrated this mindfulness that you were talking about on an earlier show when you went through what I might do, what my first reactions are, and wait a minute, let me pull that back in, and you ended up with calling me a poopy head somewhere in that.
I thought
which is kind of
that's a good one. I like
I don't know, but it didn't seem as much of a threat, and then at the same time you felt better.
Even though that sounds like a regressive act,
You might have said
it was the use of humor.
right.
And that is a more integrated and a healthier defense. In fact, if you look at the research of Valiant and whatnot out of Harvard, humor is one of the healthiest way to deal with emotional impact and difficulties.
All right, I just bring an idea. Here we go.
What's that?
We're going to open up a clinic for teaching
People to call people poopy heads?
No, for humor. We're going to
Humor,
teach people
humor.
to have more fun and enjoyment and laughter and jokes in their lives, because that sounds like a very curative factor in this world that we live in with so much stress.
By the way, I have a couple of jokes. I don't think I can tell them though.
Okay, so Omo can blank this out, but I don't know. Let's don't even try. This is too much.
One of
it's
them
too
is really,
complicated.
really, really offensive. In fact, it's so offensive
Yes.
that I hate myself just thinking about it. But it is funny.
So okay, there you go.
But it is,
well,
but
we may
it's
get that
really
to that off
offensive.
the air, and if people want to hear that joke, they'll just drop by the studio here in Jordan Hall, 218, the studio for Columbus State Television. And that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
This is our show, Got Therapy? Question mark.
This sounds like the end.
And I'm coming
That
to
is-
it. However, we can continue to go.
Maybe what we can do, maybe on another show,
All
we
right.
can talk about the process of the healthy process of dealing with emotional impacts. Because
Yes.
there is and mindfulness figures into that, because one of the things that therapy teaches you is to be aware of the way in which your environment may be affecting you, giving it a name, and then giving yourself the option of being able to do something with it,
Okay, I like that.
instead of stabbing someone in the eye.
Well, yeah, that was your first impulse,
My
and I'm
first
glad you
impulse.
didn't act on it like that. But the notion is that
What's that mean?
she's all right. No, it's another narcissistic wound. Don't go there.
Shut up.
We just got a note from one of
it
our
millimeters?
producer here. Yes. See.
You're thinking about that, huh?
No, I'm not going down that road. She was just giving some time, and I think it's probably pretty nice of her to let us
12
know that.
years
And we're
old.
coming to the end of this show.
Yeah.
And so next time, how to deal with those.
Well, we also, my anniversary's this Monday, so we could also talk about how that goes.
You know, we had actually talked about
12 years balsa wood. I said, right?
12 years is balsa wood.
Balsa.
I don't know. What are you going to get her? One of those airplanes made out of balsa wood?
You could, yeah. Actually, what I was thinking about getting was flowers and then a nice restaurant. Is that too cheap?
No.
The restaurant's like $150 it's going to cost me.
Well, that's very nice of you, by the way, Mel. I always said it doesn't really matter. It matters about the impact on the person. How do they receive it? Is it something that they want?
Well, the impact is they're still married to me. So really, this is really,
there's a lot going on there.
This is really, I'm trying to, you know, to ameliorate the impact of that. 12 years of being married to me. It's really,
I think restaurant, movie, expensive restaurant and movie every night for the next couple of years.
A cortical scrub, something that would erase some memories, maybe.
All right, but it's the impact on her. If she likes that, if she appreciates that, that's what you do. It's not about your narcissism at this particular moment. I'm sorry to say. Sorry, another wound. Another narcissistic wound right there.
Actually, what I'm worried about is the potential implications of getting it wrong.
Right.
That's really sort of, you know, I'm just, I have to, you know, have to get this right.
Yeah, well, you've done a good job today here on the show, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. This is Got Therapy. Dr. Dan Rose, the director of the
I've been working out.
Counseling Center here at Columbus State University, and he's in the studio with us every week. We're talking about all of these topics, and I appreciate when you said humor, because I think you've used a lot of humor on this show today.
I do.
And I hope our viewers enjoyed that. So we're going to come back next week, and we're going to talk about
my anniversary.
Evidently, how that went. Let's go there, because that's going to be interesting to find out.
12 years. We were married 2001, October or June 6th.
Knowing the date is important, and by the way,
my wife reminded me a couple of days ago.
Very nice of her to remind you, so that you wouldn't get into trouble.
She wasn't even subtle about it. She just simply said, you know, and then I'm like, oh.
Yes,
I didn't feel like I was like, yeah, I got that.
I got it, yeah.
But then part of me, I beat myself a little. I was a little afraid at that point.
Ladies and gentlemen, Got Therapy. Tune in next week. I'm Michael Baltimore. It's Dan Rose. We're going to find out about that anniversary. See you next time.